As the fishermen were working on their boat, they were shocked to see something happening just 10 kilometers away. The vastness of the ocean and its numerous life forms can be quite astounding. A 6-mile stretch, yet so much life. Not too far into the shallow water, one can expect to find some remarkable things. But a group of fishermen encountered something unexpected as they were fishing in their boat. In the summer of 2019, Rendor encountered a beautiful day on the Atlantic coast near Maine. The sun was beaming, reflecting off the still ocean surface and creating a perfect environment for fishing. It was an ordinary day that turned into anything but ordinary. Ren had been a fisherman for pretty much his entire life. His father had been one, and when Ren was young, he would often go out to his dad's boat to help bring in the day's haul. As a boy, Ren had always loved the ocean. He loved that its colors changed daily from a clear sapphire blue to a murky turquoise kind of green. What's more, Ren was quite an inquisitive young boy, and he loved to spot the different animals that lived in the sea. Whenever he was lucky enough to see a part of dolphins or even a few whales, Ren would run to the bow of the ship in the hopes that he would be able to see what the creatures were doing and where they were going. As he got older, Ren found himself helping his father hold the fish and lobsters in more often than not. He wanted to learn how to become a successful fisherman like his dad, as he hoped to take over the family business one day. The more that Ren helped out on the boat, the more that he learned. By the time he was 16 years old, Ren knew all of the technical terms for the boat and its important equipment. He also knew how to steer the ship, although his father would only allow him to do so when the sea was very calm, as he did not want his son to crash the boat. When Ren was 18 years old, he finished high school and decided to follow in his father's footsteps and become a fisherman. At first, his parents were a bit cautious. They had always hoped that their son would want to take his studies further and pursue a more profitable career. However, that's not what Ren wanted. He loved the ocean too much, and he did not want to have a job where he would not be able to enjoy the beauty of it on a daily basis. The young man worked with his father for quite a few years, but eventually the older man decided that he had had enough and that he wanted to retire. Ren was sad to see him go. However, he was happy that his dad was finally able to relax and enjoy his life a bit more. After deciding to retire, Ree's father told his son that the fishing boat was now his, and that he was able to be the new captain. Ren was ecstatic. He had always wanted to captain his own fishing vessel, and it looked like his dreams had finally come true. One day, Ren was out on his fishing boat with his crew. It was a cold morning, but the sun was shining and reflecting off of the ocean, making it look as beautiful as ever. Ren and his crew were sailing roughly 6 miles, 10 kilometers off of the coast. They were looking for lobsters and checking some of the traps that they had laid down a few days previously. As the crew worked, they picked up trap after trap of lobsters. Some of them they kept as they would be perfect to sell at the market, whilst others they threw back in the water as they weren't yet big enough to be caught and sold. It was whilst they were doing this that Ren and his shipmates noticed something very strange in the water. At first, the captain couldn't make out what the shape was, but after sailing a little closer, he was able to determine that it was an animal of some kind. But what confused Ren was that he had never seen a sea creature like it before. In the 20+ years that the man had been at sea, he had seen a variety of creatures, and yet he had never seen the weird shape that was splashing about in the water ahead of his ship. Wanting to know what kind of animal it was, Ren decided to sail the ship closer, but what he and his crew saw shocked them greatly. Instead of it being an unusual sea creature causing a commotion in the water, it was actually an animal that belonged on land. It turned out that a juvenile buck had somehow gotten swept from the land and taken 6 miles, 10 kilometers out to sea. It's likely that the young buck had been on the beach enjoying some fresh seaweed when a large wave had taken him by surprise and dragged him out into the ocean, or the animal could have gone for a swim to cool off and got caught up in a powerful undercurrent, which took him away from the shore. However, the deer had ended up in the middle of the sea. It didn't matter. What truly mattered was that it clearly needed help, otherwise it would likely not last much longer by itself. Speaking to ABC News after the ordeal, Ren told the reporter that he and his crew had spotted the young buck struggling to stay afloat in the water, and that they couldn't let the poor guy suffer and drown. However, getting the frightened and panicking deer aboard the ship was no easy task. The crew knew that they had to be careful when getting close to the deer because if the boat came in at the wrong angle, it could hit the animal and possibly push it under the water, causing it to drown. Wanting to make sure that that didn't happen, Wren had to circle the boat around a number of times before the crew were able to get a good angle on the deer. Once they were in the correct position, a few members of the crew acted quickly to save the animal. Jared Thaxter, one of Wren's shipmates, told a B to News how the men grabbed the deer by the antlers and maybe a leg or two and just dragged him in. The crew had to be quick as the deer could struggle in the water and possibly pull one of the men in. Thankfully, that didn't happen and the buck was pulled to safety. Once the animal was on board the boat, it laid down near the back of the ship, exhausted from trying to stay afloat. The men all gave it some space as they did not wish to further panic and stress the poor deer out, knowing that they couldn't continue pulling in their lobster hole with a wild animal on board. Wren made the decision to turn around and return to shore. The journey took roughly 30 minutes, during which time the deer remained in his spot at the back of the boat. Once the crew were finally back on shore, they let the deer off the vessel. The animal was more than happy to be back on dry land and joyfully, if not a little tiredly, trotted off up the beach. The men watched as the young buck disappeared. They were happy that they had managed to save his life and were relieved to see that the animal was more or less okay. After ascertaining the deer wasn't attempting to swim again, Wren turned the boat and sailed away so that he and his team could keep on fishing for lobsters. Despite not finding a mythical creature, this crew will always remember the day they rescued a baby deer in the middle of the ocean. It was an incredible experience and something they will never forget. What an amazing story. Hopefully the deer learned its lesson and won't be tempted by the waves again in the future. Let me know your opinion about it in the comments, and don't forget to press the like and subscribe buttons to keep getting some amazing videos.